Welcome to the Big Me Kickoff. I am your host, Kevin Noon. It is Wednesday, December 18th. 1 week until Christmas Day for those who celebrate. Fewer days until Ohio State's game against Tennessee in the college football playoff first round. So lots going on. Other holidays coming up too, Hanukkah and everything else. So happy holidays to those who all celebrate. Let's just get a couple things started here before we get into the crux of the show. Another recorded show. I made my promise I was going to do 5 shows this week. This is number 3. This will be a high water mark for me in a week, 3. But if we get to 5, that would be impressive as well. If you're watching us on YouTube, be sure to subscribe to the channel, hit the bell, hit the thumbs up. All of that helps us with our distribution. If you're listening to us on your favorite podcasting platform, be sure to write us a 5-star review. That also helps us with our distribution. Not a member of BuckeyeHuddle.com? Why not? $4.99 first month. Gets you almost all the way to the national championship game. Can this football team follow in kind? I guess we're all going to find out together. But sign up for BuckeyeHuddle.com. We're going to do something a little different today and talk about the tail of the tape. And that term is used a lot, and there are lots of places out there nationally that write tail of the tape stories. Nobody owns that. I've written a tail of the tape for Ohio State for no less than 10 years, probably 15 years. So I can stake my claim pretty firmly that I've been doing this for a long time. It's one of the few premium stories that I write. And by premium, I mean it's exclusive to our members over at Buckeye Huddle. So I'm not going to get into everything that I said in this piece because got to keep some things for the members, the people who pay my bills, make it all possible. And it's a very long piece. Your average web story is about 600 words, maybe a little less. A feature may be closer to 900 words, maybe even 1,000. For a game like this one, and I didn't go in and count the words, and I'm not going to count them one by one. That's not happening, but I will put it in a word processor. This may be over 5,000 words. So it's somewhere between a statistical analysis and a stream of consciousness as I look at Ohio State skill positions against the opponent's DBs, running backs against linebackers, O-line versus D-line, vice versa, and special teams. It's not my prediction. That comes out later. I don't generally predict anything in this piece. It is all a part of me building a spreadsheet out, plotting a lot of numbers, trying to figure out what makes each team tick. Am I right all the time? No, not always. My piece against Michigan had all the reasons why Ohio State was going to win that game, and obviously I did not account for world's worst offensive game plan. I didn't know that card was in the deck. Apparently it was. I'm hoping that card has been burned, and then the ashes have been sprinkled in the Olentangy. So I enjoy writing the tail of the tape, especially in an instance like this where I have 3 weeks to write it. And you're not going to want to write it 2 weeks out. I mean, you want to get up closer to the game. But I will admit I've had this piece in the can for a couple of days. You have to kind of find time in your schedule to where you can sit down and write for a couple hours. 5,000 words just doesn't magically happen. You have to think it through. You got to make sure it makes sense. It's a real beast to go through and edit. So, you take it kind of for what it's worth. And that's why I say that it's kind of a stream of consciousness. My goal is to never get up, sit down for 3 hours straight and write it. Because you get up, you wander around, you walk the dog, whatever, and you come back and you have a different voice at that point. And it looks like different authors authored it. And you don't want that. So let's kind of get into some things. And I mean, some things that are just out there in public domain, not behind the paywall. Looking at some of the main accumulation stats. And this isn't EPA or anything like that. These are, rushing offense, versus defense, passing offense versus pass efficiency defense, scoring offense versus defense. Tennessee's defense has better numbers than Ohio State's offense. And that is to be expected because Ohio State has, seen its offense slow down, certainly last week, only putting up 10 points. And, one set of data points out of 12 shouldn't completely, crater your numbers. But, Ohio State also did have, the Penn State game was close. For whatever reason, the Nebraska game was close. There were some close games along the way to where Ohio State, in scoring its 35.5 points per game, which is 17th in the nation. This isn't, what I think we're used to seeing in some other Ryan Day years to where Ohio State's scoring closer to 40 and in the top 5. Ohio State's rushing offense, 169.2 per game, is 59th in the nation. Tennessee is 8th in stopping the run, just under 100 with 99.6. Ohio State is 38th in passing offense. Tennessee is a top 10 team in its passing defense. But you start to get into conversations about, okay, not everything is the same. Who has each team faced? Who have you faced, and why are your numbers what they are? And I guess, again, some of this stuff is also just public domain, so I'm not too concerned about talking about it. We look at the rushing offenses that Tennessee has gone against. Tennessee has gone against a grand total of 0 top 30 rushing offenses. 0. If this were 2 games into the season or 4 games into the season, you could say, well, if Tennessee shut them down with so few data points, that makes sense. You sit there and you're in elementary school and you don't turn in 3 homework assignments and get zeros on them. That's going to crater your score. So you look here, and Tennessee has faced 2 of the bottom 30 rushing offenses in Kent State and UTEP. Then everybody else is somewhere between 41st and 98th. Even Georgia 98th in the nation in rushing offense, 129.2. And all of these rankings were from the end of the conference championship games is when I put this together. After the conference championship games, no bowl games were taken into consideration to skew things. The Army-Navy game took place a week later. That was not something that I factored into here. So you may go and look and say, well, you're off on your number by 1. Well, I'm at some point you have to cap off when it is that you're looking at this feed. So that's kind of the case right there. So it's not like Tennessee has faced a team that is bound and determined to run. But with that being said, Ohio State is 59th. So as I sit here and look, and this wasn't something I necessarily did, 2 of the teams that Tennessee faced have had more rushing success than Ohio State in terms of yards. Yards and touchdowns are 2 very different things. Alabama's 41st, Arkansas is 42nd. Tennessee went 1-1 against those 2 teams. So I don't think that it's necessarily a case of where everybody is completely throwing the baby out with the bathwater. Ohio State's not going to be able to protect Will Howard. Ohio State's not going to be able to run the ball, all based on 1 game. If Ohio State comes out and runs that same offensive scheme, Ohio State's not going to be able to run the ball. It is what it is. I try to be honest with you guys. I do get accused sometimes of maybe being a little too rah-rah. If Ohio State says we're going to take that Michigan game plan, laminate that sucker, and use that again moving forward, success is going to leave the program. They cannot do that again. Little birdie told me they're not going to run that offense. I feel pretty safe in that. But, the point is that that's just, that I would not expect, there are so many Ohio State fans that are saying that Ohio State's in deep trouble in this game because I saw the Michigan game. Okay, I did too. We all saw it, unfortunately. Doesn't mean that you're necessarily going to do the same thing. You're not mandated. You're not kept between guardrails to where you have to you declare one game plan and you can't deviate from it for the rest of the year. So that's kind of my view on that. And I'm doing these a little bit of out of order. I normally do skill positions first, but it's just a case of where if you take Tennessee's run defense and you take the non-conference games out of the mix, allowing 2.8 yards per carry overall becomes 3.3 yards per carry. So that's certainly a half a yard isn't necessarily going to change the world. Anything under 4 yards per carry is really good. So Tennessee, even in SEC play, was still very good against the run. But as I pointed out, Tennessee did not face the gauntlet in rushing teams. And just for comparison, at risk of going back and talking about this later, Ohio State faced 3 of the top 30 rushing defenses. Ohio State also faced 4 of the worst 30 rushing offenses. I mean, so Ohio State, Marshall was 20th, Iowa was 21st, Penn State was 19th. So, I mean, Ohio State was at least more tested on that, but Ohio State also had more layups. Akron 121, Michigan State 110, Purdue also 110, and then Northwestern 122nd in the nation. So, would you rather face 10 teams in the middle and 2 teams at the bottom, or would you rather have 3 tests at the top, 4 tests at the bottom, and everybody else kind of in the middle? We're going to find out. It doesn't change the fact that Dylan Sampson is very talented for Tennessee. It doesn't change the fact that Quinshon Judkins and Trevion Henderson, very talented for Ohio State. I think one of the X factors is going to be Q run. We saw the last game of C.J. Stroud's career, and I'm not saying that Will Howard is C.J. Stroud. That's not fair to either. But that C.J. was out there running for huge gains and everything else against Georgia. Could we see Will Howard really lay it out there on the line? Because there's no saving yourself for the next round. You lose and you're done. Especially when you're a senior and you're out of eligibility. You lose and you're done. And then you wake up the next morning and you're starting to prepare for the NFL scouting combine. When it comes to the Ohio State's pass game against Tennessee's pass defense, I think people are sleeping a little bit on Tennessee's pass defense. Okay, I get it. Tennessee is 9th in pass efficiency defense, but 17th in yards allowed. Yards allowed doesn't really mean anything to me. For comparison's sake, Ohio State is 4th in efficiency and 2nd in yards allowed. Nobody's really been able to throw against Ohio State, but I'll get into that one here in a minute. Tennessee has faced a couple of really good passing teams, but lost both of those games. I'm looking right here at my spreadsheet. 2 teams in the top 30. Arkansas was 21st, loss. Georgia was 12th, loss. Tennessee's faced 3 teams in the bottom 30 nationally. Kent State 125, Oklahoma 122, and Vanderbilt 116. And actually, I should have marked them as 4. I didn't even see this one. And Kentucky's 111. I've been looking at the spreadsheet for 3 weeks, and I just noticed that I didn't have it. I didn't have it turned blue. So that is problematic for what Tennessee has faced, and even beyond that, UTEP was not exactly great at 97th. Florida wasn't all that great at 78th, and for full disclosure, of the 12-game schedule, I'm only counting 11 of the games. UT Chattanooga is an FCS team. I gray those numbers out because their rankings are, FCS versus FCS, and it just doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. And while Chattanooga is 46th in FCS, if Chattanooga played a full FBS schedule, I guarantee you it would not be 46th in the nation. It's just, I promise you that. So it's going to come down to Will Howard, and it's going to come down to Will Howard, A, making smart throws, B, being protected, and C, not trying to do too much. Is that all? Is that all it's going to take? If he just does all that, do you want him to drive the team bus too while you're at it, Kevin? When you're the quarterback, there's a lot of expectations. A lot of things are put on your shoulders when you're the quarterback of a college football playoff team. Making good throws, making good throws and smart decisions overlap in like 50 points, but don't overlap in some other points. Making the right decision of who to throw to is one thing. Mechanically making the right throw, making a good throw is something else. You could have a Mecca Ibuka wide open with nobody 7 yards around him. And if you skip it on the ground to him, it doesn't matter. It's an incompletion. You could have Jeremiah Smith in the corner of the end zone, and if you airmail him by 8 feet, it's an incompletion. So you've not only got to sit there and make the right decision, but mechanically you need to make the right throw. You need to throw it properly. Now, Will Howard, for all the issues that were in the Michigan game, was like the nation's second most accurate passer at that point. He's still one of the nation's most accurate passers. Yes, we could get in and dissect the fact that his deep ball isn't great. He either puts too much air on it and forces the receiver to have to essentially stop to wait for it, or he puts it on too much of a line, or what. I mean, you're going to have that. I have yet to see a quarterback who completes, who with 30 attempts who completes 30 passes. We all joke and have the Tate Martell line going 11 for 11. So whenever you complete 11 in a row, generally somebody in the press box is like, "Oh, he's in Martell territory." We've seen Will Howard complete 14 of 14, 15 of 15, something around there. He is plenty capable. I mean, a lot of times though, that too is Ohio State can out scheme a lot of people, and maybe especially in games that aren't talent equated. But with that being said, you sit there and you look at Will Howard, and I'm looking at just some Ohio State passing numbers. In Indiana, Ohio State was 22 of 26 throwing the ball, 201, 2 touchdowns, and an interception. That's what I call an impressive game. For all the problems with the Nebraska game, 13 of 16, 221, 3 touchdowns, and an interception. Yeah, you want to get rid of the interception. The Iowa game, 21 of 25, 209, 4 touchdowns, and an interception. Howard is capable, but of all the teams I just mentioned there, I don't think any of them put the type of pressure on the quarterback that Tennessee does. And I'm kind of moving ahead here. And again, it's the tail of the tape. I really, really urge people who are not members, check us out for $4.99. I mean, this is a really good piece. I'm one of the most self-deprecating people you'll ever meet, whether in person or just here on the computer. I'm not going to toot my horn all that often, but I'm very proud of Tail of the Tape. The first 4 of the year I'm not proud of. And that's because there are no data points. So it's a lot of eye test, and the pieces are 2,000 words and not 5,000 words, because I'm not going to put a bunch of filler in there to hit an artificial threshold. I'm very proud of the piece, and I think you'll really enjoy it. For those of you who haven't read it, and those who have, get in the comments and tell people how much you like it. Tennessee is going to put a lot of pressure on Ohio State. I've said this in other shows, and I'll say it again. When I look at Tennessee, I see a Penn State-esque type of team. And I know that there is a lot of negative connotation with Penn State. Granted, Penn State went to the Big Ten championship game this year. Granted, Penn State is the number 4 team in the college football playoff rankings and on the 6th line in terms of seeding. So it's not necessary. I'm not saying it as a slight. Abdul Carter for Penn State and James Pierce Jr. for Tennessee possess a lot of similarities in their impact in the game. They don't necessarily have to be the same player. You don't have to go to the roster and say, this guy's an inch taller and this guy's 10 pounds heavier or whatever. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about being a game wrecker. I'm talking about being a game wrecker at the position. And for those who maybe are not Big Ten fans who just stumbled across this, Abdul Carter was a linebacker. He slid down to defensive end. He's really been impactful there. So the entire Tennessee line is impressive. Their other end, I'm very impressed with him too. The D tackles are not getting the same mention as the ends. I think that's fair. I think it was PFF put like the 10 best D tackles in the playoff field. None of them were from Tennessee. Tyleik Williams made it for Ohio State. I think he was like seventh out of 7 out of the 10. But it's going to come down to what Ohio State is able to do against that Penn State front. Is Penn State going to be able? I'm sorry, Tennessee. That's how similar they are. Is Tennessee going to be able to stop Ohio State run with a light box? I personally don't see it. I'm not saying that I'm seeing Ohio State running. I'm just not seeing Tennessee being able to maintain a light box, which means it's going to be a pick your poison type of situation. You load up the box, then what do? Do you send 4? Do you send 5? Do you send 6 to try and speed them up? Or, if you send 4 and you're not getting great, penetration, you give a quarterback enough time, and he's going to find somebody open 97% of the time. There absolutely are coverage sacks, but a lot of times coverage sacks are a result of protection breakdowns eventually. If you put a quarterback back there and you say, okay, nobody can rush, and we're going to have 4 occupy 5, somebody's going to break free because the offense always has the advantage of knowing where they're going. Where are they going with it? So Tennessee, I really should have not talked about Penn State because I've got the Nittany Lions on the mind. Tennessee really has to figure out how to accomplish everything. Get after Howard, cover Ohio State's receivers, and stop the run. That's what makes the game great. And when I sit there and I say it like that, it's like, well, hell, Kevin, you're probably talking about the over. What is this going to be? 42-39? No. But then again, I do remember a game between two of the nation's top defenses in 2006, Ohio State and Michigan. This is going to be a 10-6 game, and it was 42-39. That's where I came up with the number. So there will be a challenge there. Flipping back on the other side, Ohio State has not faced any great passers this year, really. Indiana was the best at 29 in the nation. Curtis Rourke, tremendous passer. You're going to be very interested on Friday to watch the Indiana-Notre Dame game. He was 29. They were 29th in the nation. Drew Allard, Penn State, 41st. So I think that's kind of the weak point of that Penn State offense. But Ohio State faced 6. 6 of Ohio State's 12 games were against bottom 30 passing offenses. And even some of the games that were not against bottom 30, it's like, well, that guy wasn't any good. I mean, Akron, Michigan State, 80th, Aiden Childs, Nebraska, Dylan Raiola, 66th. So it was a down year for throwing the ball in the Big Ten. It was not a big surprise, and Oregon. I can't believe I did talk about Oregon's 14th with Dylan Gabriel. So apologies there. It was a very slim pickings field to pick quarterbacks from the conference, especially with it being an 18-team conference, and you're only going to get to play nine of the other 17 teams. So it just depends on who you get. But I think we all determined that Ohio State really drew the toughest draw of anybody in the league when it came to playing the top teams. Yes, there was Purdue. Yes, there was Northwestern. Neither of them were any good. It is what it is. But I mean, Ohio State, there are 133 teams in the nation. Michigan was 129th. They threw for 62 yards. Unfortunately, Ohio State couldn't play special teams or run the ball. Iowa was 130th. I mean, it was just pretty brutal right there. So I'm not going to get too caught up on Ohio State's passing numbers. I think Tennessee is going to probably be somewhere, in my opinion. Yes, I know that their passing offense, as I said, is 62nd. But I think for quarterback talent, it's going to be somewhere between Gabriel and Allard. It's just a matter of will Nico be able to complete passes? Will Nico be able to thread the needle? Ohio State's secondary is very good. Will they be able to bait IGB into some PI calls? Will they be able to hit back shoulder throws against Denzel Burke? And that remains to be seen. I mean, that kind of remains to be seen. But yeah, the other defensive end, as I'm looking here through my note, is Joshua Josephs. I really like him. I think that while we all talk about James Pierce Jr., we need to kind of focus on that as well. I want to remind people too, as we're closing in on 25 minutes here on the Big Me Kickoff. I want to thank everybody for watching. Be sure to stay with me on Thursday. I will kind of recap my By the Numbers piece. And then on Friday, we are going live for a live pregame type of show. We'll go an hour and a half. We'll see. However long people want to talk, we'll talk about it. I will be your internet shrink to help you feel better about the upcoming game, and then the Buckeyes better deliver, or I will hear about it for months. Tennessee does not have Hendon Hooker back there in terms of the gunslinger who can make all of these throws. Nico can make them. Nico just hasn't made them. I said it in a piece, and I don't remember which one it is because I've written 5 pieces this week too, so they all kind of blend together. Nico is not the guy this year. Nico has every opportunity to be the guy over the course of his career. He is that talented. He has that type of talent. He hasn't grown into all of it yet, and I don't mean that necessarily from like a physical standpoint. He physically is impressive. I'd like to see him maybe fill out a little bit more, but he hasn't. Quarterbacking is about talent, knowledge, and faith. You can have the talent, you can have the God-given abilities given to you, and then you have to develop it. You have to develop the talent. You have to sit there and have the talent around you, though. I mean, you could be the best passer in the world. You're not going to be able to thread the needle all the time. I think Tennessee is maybe a little thin on established pass catchers. Dante Stallworth, I think, is really good. I think that he is a problem. I think their tight end is really good. The two of them have 10 combined receiving touchdowns. The thing with or Thornton, did I say Stallworth? Thornton. I think the problem there is 4 of his 6 touchdowns were against Vandy and UTC, against Chattanooga. So what is he going to be able to do in big games? Is Nico going to have the weapons to throw to? Now, if this is a low-scoring game, like I think most of us are expecting, how many touchdowns does he need to throw for? 2? I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think a lot of it has to do as well with Dylan Sampson at running back and what he's able to do. But how many points is going to be enough to win this game? I wrote pieces earlier in the week about what Ohio State's O needs to do to win and what their D needs to do to win. And I said Ohio State needed to score more than 24 and that Ohio State needed to hold Tennessee to fewer than 21. And I even said this on my show yesterday. I think my numbers are coming down a little bit. And it's not coming down in terms of what I think the margin of victory is going to be. It's coming down in terms of I think it's going to be lower scoring than I even once thought. And we're so ruined by modern football. You sit there and you think, 28-20 is a low-scoring game. No, it's not. I mean, there's just so many games out there, though, that, Ohio State, beats Purdue 45-0. Ohio State, beats Marshall 49-14. The Indiana game 38-15. There's a lot of points there. There certainly are defensive games too. And I'm not going to talk about Ohio State's last game of the season. I mean, Tennessee is not smacking anybody around who is in the SEC. Their 4 non-conference games, they gave up a grand total of 13 points to Chattanooga, NC State, Kent State, and UTEP. Pitched 2 shutouts and scored in the 50s in 2 games, in the 60s in 1 game, and in the 70s in another. So you sit there and that's the problem with accumulation stats. You sit there and you look at 69, 51, 71, 56 points, and it's like, well, obviously this offense is just a juggernaut. Nobody can stop them. And then, Georgia holds them to 17. Florida holds them to 17 in regulation, ends up losing 23-17 in overtime. Arkansas holds them to 14. Oklahoma holds them to 25. Ohio State maybe was not held as low in some of its games as Tennessee was. This is sometimes where we get a little colorblind with the eye test. For so many years, the SEC has been far and away the better conference from 1 to 8 in a lot of ways. So you sit there and you're immediately like, when you sit there and see Nebraska and Purdue and Michigan State and Iowa on the schedule, but really was Oklahoma. Where would Oklahoma finish in the Big Ten? Now I can hear the SEC people out there like first. They would have finished first because the Big Ten sucks. I mean, once we get past the bluster and the rah-rah for your own conference, I mean, Oklahoma was no good. I mean, tell that to Alabama, but Oklahoma was no good. Mississippi State is certainly no good. Kentucky really isn't any good. Tell that to Lane Kiffin. Florida came on as of late, but when Tennessee beat Florida, Florida was still picking itself up off the mat. That was kind of the beginning of its run toward the end of the season to where Billy Napier saved his job. I still think in terms of conference games, Tennessee's 8 conference games versus Ohio State's 9 conference games, on first blush, I think that their schedule was better. I think that Ohio State's loss at Oregon by far is the best of the 4 losses. I think Ohio State's loss at Michigan or at home to Michigan was by far the worst of the 4 losses. But that Arkansas loss, that one is hard to explain away. The Georgia loss, I think that we can all sit there and say, well, they're still a really good team, even though Carson Beck was not him. They can't really run the ball. There's some other issues. I think that secondary is a little leaky. It's going to be interesting on Saturday. And I'm going to finish with this because we've broken the 30-minute mark, and that's my goal on most of these shows. We didn't necessarily get into all the finer points of the tail of the tape, and that's okay because, again, I want to keep something special to our subscribers, and I really want to welcome and extend the invitation for everybody out there to become a member of BuckeyeHuddle.com. If you like what we do here on the YouTube channel, it's so easy to sign up. We don't hold you captive. We don't make you jump through a bunch of hoops. We don't make you provide a DNA sample of your firstborn child or anything like that. If it's not for you or it's time to move on, you just go in and cancel. Don't want anybody to leave. I enjoy being employed. So, but check us out. It would mean a lot to me. It would mean a lot to me. And there's so many people who tell me that they really enjoy my show and everything else. So as a favor to me, give us a look at BuckeyeHuddle.com. Again, tomorrow I will go over my By the Numbers feature. Basically, it is a catch-all of several things that I was not able to work into pieces for the week that I found interesting. It is a lot of little fun snippets that you can sit there and pass off as your own information at the local watering hole, the VFW, the Elks Lodge, the carpool lane, wherever you want to sit there and talk Ohio State, Tennessee football. But until next time, I want to thank everybody for watching. Have a great day. Stay warm. Safe travels if you're coming to Columbus, and I'll talk to you very soon.